So I've been planning a personal build video for a while on this channel. Just haven't gotten to it yet. And personally, I'm using a 9900K with a 2080 Ti in this Meshify S2 case. I'm really happy with the case. It supports two 360 rads and tons of filters to keep it clean inside. However, I sprung a leak, and we'll talk about that. So what happened? So I was just on my computer watching some YouTube videos, and I noticed it shut off. A little strange, I thought. So I took a quick look inside the glass panel inside and didn't see anything right away. Turned it back on, it turned on okay. I adjusted the overclock, maybe it was unstable or something like that. I've been having it run at 5 gigahertz. Booted back into Windows okay. I said, that's strange. So I opened up Hardware Monitor and noticed it was, thermal throttling. It was at 80 degrees, 90 degrees, just opening up hardware info. And I thought that was a little strange. And I took a listen, I didn't hear the pump running. And then I took a look inside and saw there was water dripping out of the CPU block. So I immediately just shut it off. From there, I didn't even wait for it to power down. I just hit the power switch to cut it completely. Hopefully nothing else got damaged, but it was running last time I saw before I shut it down. There was a few drips of water on the video card, and I'll show where it actually dripped. Luckily, it kind of went right in between the video card and the motherboard, behind the PCI slot, and all the way down to the power supply, unfortunately. So we'll take a look. Everything was working. Hopefully, if I dry it out, it'll be okay. I don't think anything shorted because it did turn back on. That's the dangers of water cooling. So let's take a look at this, see what happened, and see what we can do to prevent it in the future. Okay, so here's my personal build. It's a parallel loop coming out of the pump up through the GPU and back out of the GPU, and then at the same time in parallel up to the CPU and out of the CPU. That was joined up here. This is pretty much acting as a small distro block, and then back into the two reservoirs, or sorry, back into the two radiators, and then finally followed by the reservoir. So when I was using the computer, I noticed it was really hot. Really hot means not good, but I do have a thermal sensor back here to check the temperature of the water. It was reading 24 degrees C. So that first made me think, hey, maybe the pump stopped and it just overheated. I poked my head in there and I did see a drop of water right here on the PCB, and a couple drops that went right behind there, and I looked up, and right here there's a crack. So if you look real closely, you probably can't see it on the camera, but there's a crack right here on the side of the block. So the acrylic kind of cracked there, and most likely it cracked because the pump died and it got too hot. When the acrylic got hot, it got soft, and then the tension from the plugs on there caused it to just crack a little bit, which released some water. Since the pump was dead, water was no longer circulating, it got hot, and went from there. So hopefully everything's okay. I'm going to fully disassemble the loop and probably have to buy a new CPU block. I'll contact EK just to see what they say, if they've ever had this happen before. I don't know if it should get soft enough to crack at 80 degrees. But the water in there was probably pretty hot because there was no circulation. So let's get started. So don't mind the mess. One of the most important things when you're building a loop is have somewhere for it to drain. So this drain is in the lowest part of the loop, right out of the reservoir where I have the temperature sensor, and I'm able to fully drain at least one reservoir. The one on top will fully drain from this point. It'll fill the reservoir and come back through. So I'll be able to drain the CPU, the GPU block, this top reservoir, and because this one, the way it's oriented, I can't get all of the water out of one side of it. So that's not a big deal. We'll go ahead and drain this, take the CPU block off, and see what we have. Okay, I wanted to use this opportunity to record just how tight these were, so I could look back at this later and determine whether or not I had these too tight. So I just took this block off of my motherboard, and I have not removed the fittings yet. So you can see, if you look really closely, that there's some cracks. If this will focus. If you catch the light just right, you can kind of see the crack. And there's also some kind of spider webbing around both sockets. It's kind of hard to make out. But where it was leaking from is this crack right here, right on the side. And with the light just right, you can see it there. So I'm going to remove these fittings just to see how tight it actually was. All right, so here's this one. It's a little tight, but it wasn't anything unreasonable. Still finger tight for sure. And that was the one that was cracked. This one is cracked a little less. Yeah, that's not that tight either. It had a, I mean, it was finger tight, just like I always set these up. And to get a closer look with the fittings out, you might be able to make out some of the small cracks around. Okay, that's what I wanted to show now that I got this all apart. And in the next one, I'll be covering kind of my loop design and reassembling the system. Thanks. See you in the next one.